All right.
Now that I've been given the permission.
You've got permission.
All right.
All right, here we go.
We are live, ladies and gentlemen, and people, folks. Hello, folks. Great to have everybody here. Welcome. Thank you. I'm Jason Loweth. I'm the Artistic Director of Only Theater Center. For those of you outside the DMV watching, OTC is an award-winning professional regional theater in Maryland, just over the DC line, no matter what Peter says, producing a diverse range of plays and musicals year-round on our 3-theater, 14-acre campus. We started this program streaming Saturdays a few weeks back by gathering local artistic directors to talk with Peter Marks about what theater after the crisis would look like, and the response and viewership was so strong, we decided to create it as a series starting today and running 7 weeks with a variety of artists and thought leaders to tell us what post-pandemic theater is going to look like. And we've decided to rename it Artists Envision the Future. We're starting today with our primary storytellers, playwrights, and we'll continue with directors, actors, and stage managers, as well as a variety of the artists that we'll be working with in our upcoming season at OTC. You can check out the full schedule at onlytheater.org. Today, we've got an hour conversation with 3 extraordinary storytellers. After about 40 or 45 minutes of conversation and future casting, we'll open to questions, or we may get to some of your questions earlier. So please use the chat field to let us know your questions. And I am proud to introduce this amazing group of folks right now. In alphabetical order, Lauren Gunderson was named the most produced playwright in America by American Theater Magazine, not once, but twice, because twice is better than once, in 2017 and 2019. So wherever you are, you've probably seen her work at Only Theater Center. Folks saw the rolling world premiere of INU, and just before the crisis, DMV audiences had 2 shots to enjoy her work, her new adaptation of Peter Pan and Wendy at Shakespeare Theater, and just a month later, her Silent Sky at Ford's. She's won a shit ton of awards, been commissioned as frequently as Rembrandt back in the day, written and spoken all over the internet and beyond, and she's also one of the most delightful and kind human beings I've had the pleasure to meet. Read all about her at laurengunderson.com. Michael R. Jackson is not yet the most produced playwright in America, but after winning the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Drama just last week, we expect he will be very soon. His Pulitzer winner, A Strange Loop, comes to the DMV courtesy of Woolly Mammoth Theater next season in what's hoped to be a pre-Broadway run. Broadway or not, A Strange Loop is only the 10th musical to be honored with a Pulitzer. The jury called it a metafictional musical that tracks the creative process of an artist transforming issues of identity, race, and sexuality that once pushed him to the margins of the cultural mainstream into a meditation on universal human fears and insecurities. And that makes it one of the most relevant and happily provocative works of the still young and still troubled 21st century. Follow him at The Living MJ on Twitter. Dani Stoller is a DMV-based playwright and performer who has trod our boards at Only many times. And COVID willing and the creek don't rise, she'll be starring in our resident professional premiere of The Humans this fall and our regional premiere of the Thanksgiving play in the spring. But she's with us today because her debut play, Easy Women Smoking Loose Cigarettes, at Signature Theater was a breakout hit for her. And though its physical run was cut cruelly short by the pandemic, its virtual stream sold out online within days of its announcement. Balanced on the knife edge, separating pain and hope, laced with tremendous wit and generous honesty, Easy Women is sure to be Dani's calling card until she writes her next hit. She's writing episode 8 for Roundhouse Theater's Homebound right now, which you can catch online in a few weeks, and you can follow all her news at danistoller.com. And last but not least, we are lucky to have as moderator for these conversations Peter Marks, chief critic of the Washington Post since 2002, after 9 years at the New York Times. He is not unfamiliar with Pulitzers, having chaired the Pulitzer's drama jury 4 times, because 4 is better than 2, which is better than 1, and even shared one himself for his own reporting at Newsday. Like any drama critic worth their salt, Peter knows as much about the political and cultural forces buffeting our country as he does about the theater. And if you don't believe me, please follow him on Twitter at Peter Marks Drama. With that, Peter, I hand it over to you, and I'm out.
Thank you so much, Jason. Boy, that was beautifully done. I thought you have more than artistic direction skills, I think, sir. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out from cutting your own hair and ordering toilet paper that will never arrive from Costco. I am thrilled to be with these very talented writers, people whose work I love to see on stages, and I'm only hopeful I get to do it again sooner rather than later. And we'll talk a little bit about what the life of a playwright is in limbo of various kinds. But first, we have to, and I know that Dani and Lauren join me in extending to Michael our heartfelt congratulations to Michael R. Jackson, winning the Pulitzer Prize, one of only, I believe, 10 musicals ever to win the Pulitzer.
That blew my mind.
Joining Rent, Next to Normal, South Pacific.
A chorus line.
A chorus line. My God, the titles are. Now you're part of history, Michael. At the young age of 67. I mean, I don't know how you did it. You look great. But it's so thrilling that we got to talk to you this week. What's this week been like?
A lot of text messages, emails, and Facebook notifications, and Twitter notifications, and Instagram notifications. It's been really great. I mean, I've said this before. Just this whole awards season and everything. Like it's been like I've been like Sam Beckett on Quantum Leap. I just keep traveling back and forth between dimensions. So it's been really to enter the Pulitzer dimension has been like the most exciting and joyful dimension I could be in.
It's a nice. I mean, in the midst of so much distressing news about where we're going in the theater, that was a reaffirmation that the theater has a life and a future, and that there are people with great talent who are going to sustain it going forward. Do you feel differently about your own career this week now that you have been put on this different platform?
I do. I mean, just because my career has been like a 20-year twisting, turning roller coaster, and the Pulitzer isn't really something that you can plan for. Like you don't put it on. It wasn't on my vision board, and so to be conferred that status sort of put the whole journey of my career into a certain context, and so it made me feel like, there's a sort of global legitimacy to what I do and to what I've been trying to do, and that whoever was on that committee on some level saw that, and so therefore it gives me even further permission to keep trying to push the form of musical theater, which is a big part of my mission statement.
Yeah, well, and we're going to talk a little bit about the trajectory of A Strange Loop. The piece that won you the prize was at Playwrights Horizons, is on track to be produced some more, and possibly on a road to Broadway at some point. But let's broaden this topic out a little bit. And I wanted to first ask Lauren this question. Lauren, given where we are, you have been produced all across America. I've seen several of your plays in the last 12 months, including a piece on Audible, the streaming podcast and audio platform. I've seen your work produced so many places. What's it like to suddenly face an environment in which it's all uncertainty now, from the certainty of these contracts for productions to looking at now a near future in which we don't know when again you're going to see your work on stage? What does that do to a playwright's psyche, sense of confidence, sense of security?
I will only speak for myself. I kind of went into instant shock, and then about a week later, instant creative mania. What do we do? I'm not a person that ever is comfortable wallowing or waiting. My response is always, okay, so what are we going to do? What's the thing? What's the plan? Let's try this. It may suck. We'll try something else. Let's do this. Let's move this. Let's push this. So pretty instantly, I went on Facebook Live and just started offering classes, and they have garnered thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of views.
Wow.
And created a pretty instant community, which was my version of proof that theater is here, the theater community is here, theater makers are here, we're ready to talk. Not all of us, and that's great. Some of us are just ready to listen, and that's great too. But there is a collectivity that is there and waiting and working right now. So that instant kind of creativity, my mind instantly goes to not the shows that are canceled, hopefully postponed, but maybe just canceled and gone. Instantly, I am thinking about what are small shows that could work in digital mediums, and instantly realizing, oh, I maybe don't like that actually, but I try it, it's fine, we'll try it. And then going, okay, but also what is, when we do get back and in a space, what is the biggest, most theatrical, most luscious thing that I could set forth so that when we get back in the theater, we get some theater. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then honestly, a lot of reaching out with students, high school and university, whose writers groups are canceled or their productions of my plays were canceled, and just spending some time with them online and chats and on Zooms, just to kind of, it just must really, really suck if you're a student at this point, especially if this is your final production, which I'm very honored that a lot of them were my shows. So at least I can do is reach out and talk and tell them we'll see you soon.
Did you all, by the way, Dani, before I ask a question about something that Lauren just brought up, I will ask you, Dani, you essentially at Signature Theater in Arlington, Virginia, were having this major moment. Your play was finally on a stage. These slots, as anybody out there who's written a play or, is on a board or an artistic director knows, they don't happen that easily. Getting a slot in someone's season is a miracle. Yours, God love you, you got it open, the play, but it was cut short, the run.
Yeah.
What did that do to you?
Well, it was a really interesting thing because I feel weird saying this. We sold out before we opened, which was really cool and completely unexpected to be like, wow, so technically, no matter what happens with this, people will be there, which is awesome. But then weirdly, when it was canceled, we were so blessed to have Eric and Maggie and Matt just like jump right on to being like, we're going to film this.
Those are the leaders of
Signature. Yeah. To have them jump on and film it so quickly, get it working so that everything was cleared with the unions and make sure that it was put out there. And then they were able to sell a certain amount of streams. So while I was really sad to not be able to see closing night, because I was actually at a final rehearsal for what I would find out was going to be canceled the next day, I then was able to share that story, my story, with people all over the world. We streamed in multiple countries. We streamed in tons of states. And that was really awesome to have people be able to see this story who wouldn't have been able to otherwise. My grandma is in a home and they can stream it. She has a poster on the wall, so that had me thinking about, as hard as it was to be like, I have to let something go that feels unfinished. It then also got me to thinking, well, in the future, what does this mean for accessibility? What does this mean for making sure that other people, and not like, I went to a public school in Brooklyn that had hundreds of kids in just my class. And, I was very fortunate to be able to go see shows on Broadway and be able to do that. But not every kid is. And I'm like, how do we make this accessible? That's what excites me now, is I'm like, okay, if anybody is going to create a way for theater to be as open source as possible, it's going to be Playwrights. Like, look at A Strange Loop and how interesting and wild it is. Like, that is going to be, how do we make that accessible? There's going to be a way. Lauren's show, Natural Shocks, which people can hear. Like, that's what excited me the most, is that out of this moment of being like, you know, we now have this ability to maybe bend what were rules to see how many people can experience theater. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's you know, that is really noble, and it sounds wonderful, but yeah. So here's my question. You know, but is that diminishing the specialness of that experience in the room with your plays and musicals? Is there something not replicable about the experience of seeing your work when it's in a digital format, or it's you know, the work you created for me to be in a room with your work? Am I getting less of your work by not being in the room with it?
For me, there was a yes to that, just in terms of like the laughing and feeling the energy of others. I definitely think being able to hear the audience on the digital film was part of it. Yes, but also I have to be like, yes, and like, yes, there's something lost, but and maybe there's a way to have it both ways.
I think they're not the same things.
Right.
Like, live theater is a thing, and it is amazing and unforgettable and is all the things that it is. And streaming theater is a different thing. And if we think of them separately, then they can be the best of what they are. And I similarly have been thinking the radical door that has been opened. And I'm so grateful for all the unions and decision makers that pretty instantly pivoted to like, yes, let's just put it online and then we'll figure it out. And I hope that openness and open-mindedness continues, because accessibility is major. The fact that plays that I would have never gotten to see, I get to see. And even if it's I think about myself with 2 infants and up at weird hours and at nursing at 3 a.m. Yes, I would have loved to see a show instead of crap TV that I was just watching in a daze. You know, there's people all over the world who, too many jobs to get to the theater, not enough childcare to get to the theater, not enough just time in the day. They would rather watch it at 8 a.m. instead of 8 p.m. And like, we should be able to go, great, welcome, so happy to have you, instead of going, I'm sorry, you need $800 and to be here at exactly this time, or else you're not invited. You know, theater's better than that. We're bigger and better than that. And I think that we can keep what is absolutely amazing about live performance and critical and humanity defining about live performance, but also go, but like, the internet exists. We could all acknowledge that.
Yeah, Michael, you feel that way?
Yeah, so I have been thinking a little bit about that too, because I never really, like, I never thought about like video, like streaming theater or anything like that. But I had the opportunity. I have another show that I'm working on, and we were supposed to have a workshop, and then once the pandemic hit, we were like, well, maybe we can do it online, because it was just going to be a book. It was just planned to be a book only reading anyway. And so I was like, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. And then we did it. And just by the nature of this, like, okay, go on StreamYard or go on, you know, Zoom or whatever. Like, I had to listen. I had to just sit. For me, what it turned into was a radio play, like when I would listen to it. And there was something that was very powerful about that for me, where I could just hear my story being read to me. And it made me wonder if like there's, you know, an analog to that, to coming back in the theater, where like maybe there are some people who can't come to the theater or don't feel comfortable coming and sitting in there in the, you know, in the theater, while in the, whatever the reality of post-COVID or COVID forever world or whatever that is, that like perhaps there is a component to like you can watch a show by just listening to it. And that there's some way that we can create an experience that, no, it isn't live theater, but that it's being told a story. I mean, there used to be radio plays all the time. So people had to use their imaginations. And it didn't detract from when they went to go actually see, you know, something on stage. That's a whole, it's like, and it actually, I think, can create a gateway to actually going to see live theater.
That's exactly what Kenneth Jones wrote in to say. He said, it's a double-edged sword. digital reduces,
Oh, there you have
but
it.
it might be also a gateway to the live experience. His caveat is when the tech is faulty in digital experiences, it becomes a turnoff.
That's true.
Totally. But it's also really new. You know, like we look at the things like Sondheim's Birthday, which was technically there were a lot of issues, but this isn't a platform or a medium that we're used to. If anybody is going to figure out how to make this easy as heck, I can give you like 35 stage managers off the top of my head who will learn how to do this in a week and make sure that it goes smooth as silk, you know? So I think it's really a time thing, but I think Michael's right.
Goes bad, it's a turnoff too.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, like Werner,
maybe
like all those Spider-Man, all the people who were in the theater when like some crazy thing would happen and they'd have to wait for 30 minutes for it to start again, and like
right.
That was essentially the real life version of like buffering.
And yes, I've seen some terrible versions of children's theater.
Yeah.
And so I took the kids and I was like, you're going to love theater, boys. I'm going to insist. So take them. And some of them have been awful. Right. And some have been fabulous. Yeah, right. When my youngest watched the first 45 minutes of the National Theater's Frankenstein before, you know, the kid dies, and that was a bit of a turnoff for him, but 45 minutes of like this big old grown-up show, and he was riveted and asked all these great questions and got the symbolism and stage design. I'm like, great. So that has turned him more into a theater person than that crappy kids play that I took him to in a theater. So
that's interesting. I was thinking, and one of the great things about having the three of you here is because so Michael talks about, you all talk about this idea of accessing a larger group. So could you reconceive A Strange Loop as a Zoom piece? I mean, it really does sort of the way it fragments into the accompanying, the ensemble of minds who are all around Usher, the central character. You could see it sort of you recreating it, but I'm wondering, is it up to you three, among others, to show us how this could work in a more creative way? Can you, how devoted are you to the idea of turning something digital into an experience that is unique and not just a recitation of your piece like a radio play, but something that uses the incredible digital malleability of the form to do something completely unique?
Well, for Homebound, the show that the web series I'm now working on for Roundhouse, to kind of pivot to that, everything is filmed by the actors and then edited by people at Roundhouse, but it's filmed via your phone or with the computer, and it's written as, what they'd be doing digitally. So all of the scenes are either you see like somebody looking at something or whatever. And it's really a fascinating way to create a story. I mean, they've also done it on like Modern Family. They had an entire episode where they were all doing FaceTimes. And so we kind of watched that for a little bit of inspiration. But I think that like, especially now, this is what we're doing. So we write from life. I mean, we are in this space where this sort of is our scenes from a day-to-day life. It's just weird and different.
I mean, I'm excited about the form because I still want theater. So yes. I don't want to make a movie. I don't want to make a short film. There are people who do that and they should do that. And I don't do that. But so I'm interested in, can we approximate, or when we can safely get back into a theater, even one actor at a time, use that space, design the hell out of it, film it in a way that is as good as the National. Like, let's have that be our bar. Let's not do anything less. So that we can really still make theater, even if it has to be two people at a time, whatever, that we can craft it in that way so it feels like it's capturing a live theatrical experience instead of something that is, because I'm frankly a little zoomed out, like everybody, a little FaceTimed out, a little like out. Sure. But I'm not is going and watching, Shakespeare's Globe and seeing those productions and the National and some of these incredible streamed theater and the Broadway HD. Like, there's a lot of great examples of like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, I'm with Lauren on that. I just would say, because I am a great admirer of everyone who specifically is creating things for these formats. I don't know. For me, it's like I haven't yet found the thing that is Michael R. Jackson's Zoom play or musical. And also, I think the musical aspect is a little difficult to deal with at this point in the development of software. But I think if one is inspired to create works in these formats, they should absolutely do that by whatever means they're able to do it. But I do think I am interested. I think I'm more interested in what Lauren is describing.
By the way, people of Theaterland and Facebook land, you are welcome to submit your comments or questions. We will integrate them. We will weave them seamlessly into our narrative here as we create this hour-long conversation. Are you thinking, so you're seeing a world, right, where no social distancing is now the rule. This is not a formula for having people interact on a stage. It imposes such restrictions on what you can do. But can you envision writing a piece for some interim period in which we're making our way back into theaters and actors can't touch?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that a challenge or is that a hindrance?
Well, the issue is, one thing is actors can touch if they've had it and are immune.
Oh, so you cast and
no,
people
seriously,
with the antibody.
Very seriously, and how riveting and wild will it be to see those actors run across the stage, smash into each other, and make out? It would cause the biggest gasp in the audience. Oh my God, stop them! You know. So there's something about the reiteration of the stage direction. I've been thinking a ton about this and how much I crave the doing and the interaction and the gesture and the kiss and the slap, and that part of theater has always been what I'm writing for, is the stage directions. So writing for that, whether you can write around it and it's the temptation you wanted and you can't have it, fine, dramatic tension there. You want it and you get it, fine, dramatic tension there. I think a lot in terms very practically about one of my favorite theaters in the Bay Area, besides my home theater of Marin Theater, is Cal Shakes, outside. Let's do some stuff outside. It's better than being inside. How can we social distance, watch a play outside, wear masks and all the things? There will be some period where if you can prove that you've had it or have been vaccinated for it when we have that, then more welcome, to be around each other. And I think that'll just be the practicality. I'll probably also have seasons of this where there'll be seasons when theater can happen, do all the plays, video them. And then maybe a season when we can't do as much of that. So I think it's the agility and the ability to iterate and just go, well, screw it. I guess we're doing this now. Well, now we can do this. Let's do it real quick. Having that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I think we have to make ourselves really open to, is that we are literally in a period of change. And so, but our lives is still a line running through that. And so there's gonna be a lot of, this feels weird to do this, but it's also gonna be really exciting because that change is gonna land somewhere else where it's a new thing. It's a new way of doing it while we, and of course I believe that we will be able to at some point sit with each other in theater again. But I think even when we get to that point, we will be changed by what has happened.
Absolutely.
And we need to acknowledge that and embrace it. Embrace that we will have changed, and that change is necessary for anything to continue to thrive. That theater will have a renaissance from this experience. Not just in terms of whether there was a virus or not, but what that made people feel. This moment is such a test of character. And I think that we will grow from having gone through this, and our work, the works that we put on stage or put on Zoom or put on audio recordings or that we do at home. I got commissioned to write a micro play for by Woolly Mammoth, and there were some people, and it was for me a dumb little 8-minute play that I wrote just to do something that made me feel useful, and I got a little money for it. But like, there were people who wrote to me, they're like, "Hi, Michael, we're doing your dumb little 8-minute play at home," and like, but like, that's great. Like, you see what I'm saying? And like, and I think we should be open to that, even if it doesn't feel necessarily as like satisfying as going to see, you know, whatever the hottest ticket in town on Broadway is. Like, I feel like we should be reminded of just what theater is. It isn't, you know, a $800 ticket to something. It's an actual practice. It's an experience. It's a way of communing. And so I'm just interested in, like, with all the growing pains that are going to be attached to that, just reminding ourselves of the core bones of the experience of theater.
That's great. I love that. I don't know if you guys saw today, the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, one of the major regional theaters in the country, sent out a letter advising that it's not going to return to the stage till March 2021. And even that is iffy. They're slashing their budget by half or 60%. They're going to do 3 shows in a season starting in March, which made me think, you know, I feel for the people who aren't going to see the shows, but I also thought of all the artists who are not going to have jobs. Dani, you're an actress in addition to being a writer. Lauren, you write plays for theaters of all sizes. Michael, you have a piece on a trajectory for Broadway, but what are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to earn money in the interim? What's the plan? Are you sort of like reflecting at this point and trying to figure it out?
Well, for me, I guess like the thing I've been thinking a lot about is that, and as I've been reading a lot of discourse on the internet, as we all are, and reading these articles about this theater closed, or this theater thinks it's going to be back in October or July or next year or whatever, or never until there's a vaccine. All these, everybody's got their different, there's lots of soothsaying going on right now. And I guess my feeling about it is like theater is not some separate thing from life. Like the industry. So like, if I'm worried about actor friends of mine going back to work in the, in a show, that means I also am worried about people, like my favorite restaurant in Washington Heights, this place called Saggio, the servers there. I don't think it will be any easier for them than it will be for the actors. And so like, my concern about everyone being able to support themselves is also then a question I'm going to ask my government. What is my government going to do to support its people while all these industries are out, like whole industries? Like, so then that also for me begs a question about, in this sort of change as we go through this, like, do we need to have a more robust conversation about nationalized funding for the arts? And I know that's been like an ongoing thing, but like now we are being tested in a very specific way. And so like, I am concerned about people being out of work, but that concern is like connected to larger systemic issues that are not just about whether a theater is slashing its budget or not, or philanthropy or any of these things. But just on the sort of like artistic level, I did read that article today, and a lot of people were like, oh, this is like very ominous. And I sort of had a different feeling about it. I was like, yes, like what they'll do in 2021 or beyond will be smaller, but it'll be like a baby step to building something different, and something different that could be really amazing. But like, if that's to be the case, you have to sort of plan for it and dream it. You have to dream it into existence. And I think that we all really need to take this time to be dreaming into existence the things that we want to see. I don't think that we can go back to before. We can't. We have to dream something bigger and better and different. And it's something that's may not feel like, again, like the going to the opening of Hamilton. But it will be something that we care about even more because we realize how precious it is. So I'm sort of looking at all of this in that way. I don't know when we'll be able to be back together. I want to desperately to be with all of you and hug you and kiss you and gossip with you and all of that. But until then, like, why don't we spend some of our time while we're worried about, whether this theater will open or not, like dreaming, what do we want to see? Where do we want to be on the other side of this? And what do we want the other side of this to look like? Sorry to go on so long.
No.
So right. I think it's exactly
awesome.
right, because part of what we do is we prove that people will pay for it and thus pay actors and thus pay, like, you got to make it, dream it, make it, put it out there, and then say, look, people love it. They want it. They're coming to it. They're giving their money, or we can make money for other people using this. Or, I mean, again, I'm the like, let's do it, make it, do it, put it out there and prove that it should be out there. It absolutely should, because we don't know what we're going to need. We don't know what we're going to want. And again, we don't know when we're going to be able to put it on a stage. So let's make something that absolutely, if we can be on a stage, put it on a stage. Document it beautifully so that if we have to pivot really quickly, we can, or make something that can absolutely work on a Zoom, can be developed on Zoom. I just did a 19-person reading of my musical. We're supposed to be doing our backers audition in New York in April, so we did it on Zoom, and it actually worked. We learned a ton. We're in rewrites already. We had like Karen Olivo and Beth Malone singing on Zoom. It was great.
What's the name of it?
It's called Jeanette. It's about the first female congressperson in American history. It was elected in 1916. So it's also about
Montana, Jeanette Rankin.
Exactly, girl. How do you know that? Nobody knows who Jeanette is.
As Jason said at the beginning, I know more than the Glass Menagerie and
my composer and lyricist Ari Afsar and I have been working on it. We were at the O'Neill last year. Anyway, so we were in the thick of making a thing. And so we had to go, well, let's make this. We're not going to stop making it. We're not going to be like, well, that's over. No, of course. Keep moving, keep going, keep iterating, having those conversations, doing it in ways you can, so that, to Michael's point, we can just keep dreaming big. And then we're going to mess up. Like, absolutely, there's going to be Zoom plays that you're like, no.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be some where you're like, that was delightful.
That's right.
Who knows? And my version of delightful is going to be way different. And my cat is just going to tell her, what do you think? But anyway, and it's going to be fine. If you don't like a Zoom play, don't watch a Zoom play. If you don't want, just keep doing. And I mean, for me, it is to Michael's point also, I was more instantly worried about the people whose livelihoods are attached to the theater. So less about like, I'm going to use this time to write my King Lear. It's like, no, I want to make sure that everybody who worked in that theater, who's going to that theater, who was employed at that theater, who planned on doing a show at that theater, has something to do. So whether that's, here's $100, come on my Facebook Live class. Here's $100, let's write a monologue for you. I don't know. Let's just do something, whatever. Like, there's just ways to keep going.
Okay, so along with that, Olivia Holler asks, do you think theater should respond to this crisis by going more local with things like porch theater, or global by streaming? I mean, or is it both?
Both. Both. I think, theater can be somebody sitting with a stick and a rock, and it can also be something enormous like the Frankenstein, that sort of work. Right. So I think if we have the ability to dream big, whatever that means to us, dreaming big could be creating something very small and specific in a certain way that can be done and filmed and be via Zoom and on a porch or whatever, or it can be absolutely national theater size and enormous and sprawling. I think as long as we can do it and we can still have people involved and excited about storytelling, then it's worth it. It's worth the try and the fail and the success. We've got to see what we can do with this new malleable form that we've kind of been thrown into. I think that's part of the excitement.
I think that people are on your wavelength, Dani. Barbara Isard Stone has this lovely statement. In part, she says, I believe we can show up and collaborate to produce plays online or in shared physical spaces. This is a wonderful creative challenge for writers to engage audiences. The old days are gone. Theater is about the human condition. Our conditions have changed. This is what Michael was saying. I am ready for this new world. It's wonderful to be part of this discussion. Let's keep it going. I think this is, yeah. Michael, were you gonna chime in?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just getting Barbara
I mean, this idea of, you know, of the old days being gone leads me to an interesting problem. So, you know, if one were the parent of a high school junior who is obsessed with the theater, who, you know, is going to apply to colleges and think about an arts program, a BFA, wants to, what does a parent at this point do you think, in terms of just worrying about whether there's going to, what opportunity there's going to be for someone now considering that life, given that now we're going to even have a backlog in terms of, you know, large companies and what they were going to produce and going forward. Is it still a time for new, fresh kids to get into this business?
So, okay. So for me, again, like, so many of these things are like questions that, one thing I think this pandemic has done has exposed like existing inequalities that, like, to like the harsh glare of day. I keep saying, like, it's almost like we turn on the light in the middle in the night. There are the roaches, but this time, instead of the roaches running away, they just stare back at us and they don't move. And so, with this question about, like, you know, students pursuing arts degrees or whatever, that for me becomes a question about how are the universities that house these arts programs really serving the students? And, like, is it actually worth it for you to take out a student loan, as I did 21 years ago, 2 of them, to go to a really expensive private school, school, as I did at NYU, which then 20 years later, when this pandemic hits, then you get like a dean, when people ask them for their money back, they put a video of themselves singing "Losing My Religion," which that's a specific situation of that. But like, it made me think about my whole career of, like, well, did I need to go to NYU for school, or could I have just moved to New York and looked at playwriting as through some sort of apprenticeship? And like, and there are tons of people, tons of great playwrights in the canon who never attended a playwriting school. That like, perhaps this is an opportunity to free students from, or potential, you know, artists from feeling like they have to shackle themselves with debt in order to participate in the arts.
Right.
That you know, that maybe there's a way to study acting, to study playwriting, to study directing without having to be in like a really expensive institution. Maybe we haven't found the exact way that happens, because these schools create pipelines, create careers. But like, I just think even the paradigm shift of, like, do I need to spend millions of like thousands and thousands of dollars in order to put myself in a pipeline to then be in the theater, you know, 10 years later, if I'm lucky, or 15 years later, you know? So I don't know. I just think I think that students should still pursue these things, but like, think about like what do you actually want? Do you want to be an artist, or do you want to be like in debt? Like what do you gain by going to these programs?
I mean, I would think that, yes, we always want voices that are coming, because theater only works specifically for, not just specifically, but since we're specifically talking about writing, works with authenticity and with voices, unheard voices thus far. So the more people that we can encourage into this field, the stronger, the better, the more diverse, the more luminous the field will be. So always, I think, if there is a person out there that thinks that there is nothing in the world that I want to do more than write plays, yes, let's make sure that they can do that, because we're going to need those voices. And I would say this kind of savvy parent answer is also learn how to write movies, learn how to write TV, learn how to write commercials, learn how to put on your own stuff, learn how to produce, learn how to design, learn how to do all the things so you can do all the things. I think that is, but the kind of ultimate specificity that we get isn't very helpful in the arts, because we're going to need to, again, iterate, innovate, and we need people who can kind of, at a drop of a hat, go, and we're doing this now, and we're doing that now. So I would say yes to those people out there who want to create art. The more art, the better. the more debt, the not better. So yes,
Right.
to Michael's point, is there a way where we can finally sound like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez here, but like, which is, I'm always a fan of sounding like her. So
Right.
like, if free college, let's make this crap free. Let's give people the education that they need so that they can do the thing that they are meant to do, with the tools that they need to, and the community that they need to do it.
Rick Davis, who is a theater professor, I believe at George Mason University, I'm not wrong, he says, changing conditions create new opportunities, and often young artists are poised to take advantage of them. We teach about self-producing and company creation. That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a good arts education is a good education, period. So
that's right.
I mean, that sounds, right to me. It's not all just about the pragmatic aspect of getting a job afterwards necessarily. Dani, you did you have a hard time getting a play produced after you were an actor first, right?
Yeah.
Was that transition hard to make?
It's going to sound like a really weird thing. Like the term when someone's like, you're in alignment and things just sort of start to, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize we were on that track. I had always written for myself, really, and my mother, and really in honor of my mom, because she always said, whatever you do, never stop writing. As much as she liked theater, she wanted me to write. And I had written this play called Accepts with Pleasure that was just, something I enjoyed, and I gave it to an actress who's a friend of mine, Rachel Zampelli Jackson, and I was like, yeah, I'm just writing this thing, and she set up this little reading in one of the rooms at Signature, just like, we should hear this. And Matt Gardner came, and then slowly the script started moving around, and they were like, we'd like this to be part of SigWorks. So really, it was an odd thing, because as much as I wanted to be able to share my work, I always kind of thought of it as just something that was like my own little secret, and sort of watched from the outside as it took forms. And so Easy Women came up when Joe and Eric were like, Accepts with Pleasure is great. It's far too big. It's 8 people. That would take out the max, which is where our musicals are. Do you have anything smaller? And I was like, well, I have this idea. So that's where that came from. And it wasn't until that it was really their faith in me that allowed me to become a multi-hyphenate artist. I had been like, oh, well, I'm an actor who likes to write. But it was their faith in saying, no, you should pursue this, that allowed me to now I feel I almost identify more in the writer side, simply because it's something that I can do every day, and my brain just starts to go like,
Well, this really says to me that the relationships that you all form with these theaters, become sort of central to your creative identities. That is, they're not just institutions that have huge staffs and are meant to, generate revenue for, within a nonprofit environment. They were also critical to nurturing who you are. You've all grown up in nonprofit theaters. Fair to say?
Yes, 100%.
You're stakeholders in a sense in what happens, over the next year and a half with these.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Is this time, Michael, you said the pandemic is, going to change everyone. There are events that create their own energy in terms of artistic pursuit and making stories around those things happening. I wonder if the three of you think of what we're going through as a springboard to some kind of dramatic work. Or are we just in a period, is this something people are going to want to forget as soon as it's over? Or is it both?
I think it's going to be very different for every playwright and artist. There's probably going to be somebody who decides to try to make their magnum opus out of this event. That will not be me. But I think that for me, that's only because there were things that I was thinking about prior to the pandemic that now, in the light of the pandemic, are systemic issues that like I want to explore those issues more than this specific event. Because again, this specific event is just, like I said, showing the light on the roaches. I want to write about the roaches.
I love that. Lauren, you know, I saw a play by you that was the most lovely evocation and explanation for me of Madame Curie's life and understanding what she did. It was the first time I ever understood, I grasped through that play the essence of what radium was, and it was so poetically described. You're married to a virologist, as you've said, which, you know, puts you, you know, mind-blowingly close to all this. Yes. Is there something very granular about understanding disease and epidemics that you could turn into theater?
Yeah, I mean, my instinct, the reason why I haven't written a virus play until now was because, like, who wants to be in a closed theater talking about germs and illness and disease? So I am not the one that's going to write like the virus musical. But what I am interested in, more to the point of what my husband does and why I'm so interested, is he actually, to study something, the smallest thing, living thing, although living can be debated, this is, you know, science happening, is he also thinks about the biggest things, because he's thinking about pandemics. He's thinking about, my husband, Nathan Wolfe, is one of the preeminent pandemic scientists in the world. And he's not the one you call during the pandemic. He's the one you call to make sure we don't have one. So his work has always been, where are these pandemics coming from? How do they become so virulent and so powerful and so transmissible? How does it work on a society? How do we protect ourselves and are resilient to it? So that's what I want to write about. And my artistic director of my home theater, Marin, his name is Jason Minadakis, texted me after this whole thing started. I'm in San Francisco. We were the first ones to go into shelter in place. So we've been doing this for quite a while. And he texted me and was like, would you ever want to write about Nathan? My husband has a book out. And I thought, you know, well, maybe some combination of what I know intimately about him and what it is to be the person holding this information in your head and thinking these thoughts of great, maddening levels of destruction. And also, what is it like to like hug your kids? And anyway, so I am pursuing that, but I'm also more thinking about less content-wise and more context. Like, what is the way that it changes to have, what is a two-person play now if you can't actually get together? And what are plays that can pivot easily from, let's stage it, make it absolutely gorgeous, riveting theater, and also an amazing audio play, which is part of what we found in the Marie Curie process, which I loved. And those two experiences are different. And I love them both for what they were allowed to do. So I'm thinking science. I'm thinking, how do you make flexible theater? How do you write about this, but not about this? You know what I mean? Right. How do you find joy and hope too?
There's I think there's almost something Ibsen-esque about Anthony Fauci and the moral dilemma he faces of having information, understanding what's really going on and what he's not allowed to say. And at what point is the breaking point for him between just letting loose and telling the truth, as opposed to having to dance around the truth and possibly endanger lives. I don't know how that looks, but that seems to me like a perfect dramatic sort of turning.
Theater's always about truth, and it's always about authenticity, and it's always about character revealing actions and decisions, and that is what we're seeing. Now, maybe I would write a play and my hero would be some lofty scientist, and now my hero is the guy who brings my groceries so that my kids can eat and I don't have to put them in danger going to the grocery store. Like, so our versions of heroes are different, our versions of stakes are different, our versions of what it means to touch and love and miss each other is different. So all of that, to Michael's point, we're not going back. We only go forward with these realities in our hearts, and art is going to either have to catch up, because art that's going back to the way it was, I don't want to see that art. That art doesn't mean anything to me now. Yeah. What's next? What's now? What's becoming?
Yeah. Karen, go ahead, Michael.
Oh no, I was just going to say, like, also I'm thinking about art that was created like sort of in the shadow of the bomb, you know, and staring into the uncertainty and the sort of the void, like, and I feel like we're in another moment of that. And also just a separate thing I meant to say earlier was that, like, another great thing about sort of whether you decide to do a Zoom play or not is that the sort of all the number of people and content makers that can do it. It's not just sort of like the anointed few of the theater that like, and so like when I think about people saying, do I pursue playwriting or not? Like, at least in this moment, like this is revealing to us that like we can connect with each other in all kinds of ways. Think of the actors that playwrights can meet all across the country that can read their plays. Like some young kid who is an art student, a playwriting student, an acting student. Like you can be in New York, they can be in Des Moines, Iowa. They can be, you know, like you're sort of only limited by your internet access, which is another issue of access that needs to be discussed in like, you know, broadband and all that stuff. But like, I think that like there's a way, like if we're willing to like really wrap our minds around it, there's a way that we can like use this as a moment of transformation.
So speaking of streaming, Karen Novosad, I don't know how to say the last name, Novosad, asks, could a play stream live a number of different times during a limited run? Could you see limiting the number of people per performance? One of the beauties of seeing live theater is going back to see it after it has run for a while and seeing how it plays now, I guess she's saying. I guess the question there is, can you see running a play, you know, for 2 months, 3 months online as an alternative to doing it live?
I think everybody's trying to figure out ways to do it. Is it doing it live every night on a stream? Is it recording it and releasing it? This is where the conversations with the unions are happening. And all the artistic directors I'm working with are trying to negotiate, talk, figure this out so that they can, because there's art ready. There's art ready to go. There's people ready to make it. We are ready, ready, ready. And there is some holdup with how it's delivered and under what contract is it, and how do you, I mean, obviously making sure to take care of artists and making sure everyone gets paid what they deserve and everything like that is the priority. But agreeing upon that, how can we get it out in the world? And I know so many things that are ready, but are being, you know, there's all sorts, it's a new world, it's a brave new world. And
yeah,
I hope we can pivot quickly to let people make the things they want to make and give it in the ways that we can give it now.
Yeah, I think we have to, I think that we have to like just think very ethically about all of the people impacted by doing things like that. And so it made me, like, I think one of the reasons why I maybe was attracted to something like, I think why I'm attracted to the sort of radio play aspect of some of this stuff is because it's less, like, I think, like, if everything was just recorded and released, you know, whatever, people could start pirating it, like, in ways that are not going to be fair to the people making it. Whereas I wondered if, like, if there was some sort of, like audible aspect to something that was live for a limited amount of time, that, like, maybe people would, like, they could watch it that one time, but they could listen to it many times.
Yeah.
If they wanted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's just me thinking out loud, but, like, I get worried about sort of the folks who would just use an opportunity to see something online as a way to, like, just screen record it and then like sell it to their friends or give it away for free. But again, so that's why I just think we have to think through all of the sort of implications of doing something like that.
I just wanted to say this has been fantastic, and I reached into my back pocket. I didn't realize this, but I had a ticket stub from a show I had seen several months ago. It's the universe telling me to get back in a theater.
Yay!
You know, so thank you all, and Jason, I hand it back to you. This was really, really fun.
Thanks for your question.
All the best, guys.
Thank you. Yes, this is wonderful.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for everybody who's been watching and these amazing questions. I think that it's incredibly inspiring, as Debbie Ellinghaus, our managing director at Only Theater, texted me about 20 minutes ago. Oh my God, this is so inspiring and just what I needed at this moment, because the drumbeat of bad news it can be overwhelming, but I think what you are all proving is that the future is only limited by our imaginations, and more specifically, your imaginations. So I really can't wait to be part of all the stories that you all are going to be telling, to sit in the room and in a room with you, so that I can experience the new stories that you're all going to be telling once this is all over. So thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. I'll be talking to Claire Barron, Pulitzer nominee for Dance Nation, and director Dave Hernandez. Yay, Claire. So thank you all so much for being part of this, and have a great and safe week till we meet again. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Tony.